moved out of the era, and while we recognise just how much harm it's done, we saw the John Hopkins study come out just the other day. Now we can be certain that it killed more than that. So, and this is the point I made in court this week when I was asked about the protests and why we were out. I said, well, for this legislation to be lawful and proportionate, we had to be protecting the right to life. And we didn't protect the right to life. People died, domestic violence, children in care homes, suicide, mental health, people who missed appointments. We never protected the right to life. However, society is moving on, and society kind of wants to forget. It's pretty traumatised, it doesn't like to talk about it, and right now we've got a lot of other issues coming up. So we've got the cost of living crisis, and this is a huge issue, and we're again seeing this psychological abuse from the government saying, oh yeah, we'll put your bills up by £1,800, but then we'll give you £950, aren't we nice? No, that's not how it works. The price cap rise was justified because the wholesale price of gas had gone up. So our bills went up 54%, but actually that transpired to be up to 625% for some people. And wholesale gas prices have just plummeted by 94%. Have your bills plummeted by 94%? No, I didn't think so. So again, it's just it's not really a cost of living crisis, it's a greed crisis, and it's a governmental politicised crisis. It's not a real cost of living crisis. Apparently Richie's to the rescue at last. He's not. It's literally just another con and more psychological abuse from the government. But we're stuck. We're in this position where people are genuinely having to choose between eating or eating. The stories that we're hearing are just horrific. Young mothers with 3 children who felt like she couldn't care for them, and she couldn't feed them, she couldn't keep them safe, she couldn't keep them warm. So she asked for them to be put into foster care, and then she went and killed herself. And this is what's happening across the nation right now, and that's the summer. And the cost of living crisis is only going to get worse when the price cap goes up again in October and we hit the winter. So this is a bind. It's a real bind in terms of campaigning, because do we want to go cap in hand to the government and say, please, will you help us? Not really, because we don't actually want to be dependent on the state. But we also can't have 6.5 million children living in poverty like we do right now. And also, people who are hungry and don't have security and are cold can't focus on anything else. So this has really been manufactured, because what they want to do is there's a whole load of bills that they're about to get through, and they want us in a weakened position so that we can't campaign. So obviously we've got the WHO Pandemic Treaty, which is an issue as well, but that's kind of outside of the UK. In the UK, they're going to start fluoridating water, and then we've got, these are 10 bills that are about to come through Parliament that we need to campaign on. So Save Our Rights is going to be organising a very big campaign on all of these 10 bills. So we've got the Economic Crimes Bill, which is attacking cryptocurrency. It's going to make it possible for them to seize cryptocurrency in a way that they've never been able to before. Then we've got the Media Bill, which is going to penalise independent journalists. Just as we've got the wonderful United Free Press up and coming, they're going to suddenly be penalised. And then what effect is that going to have on our free speech if we can't let our independent journalists speak freely? For worry of being sued and for worry of having to pay all of the costs in court, no matter whether they win or not. And then we've got the Public Order Bill. So in the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, this is the one that people kicked up a lot of fuss about in terms of the right to protest. At the very last minute, the government tried to slip in 14 extra clauses that would have had a huge impact on our right to protest, even more than the policing bill did anyway. However, through campaigning, through working with the House of Lords, the government actually suffered 14 defeats. We did a phenomenal job on that one. However, everything that we defeated them on, they're bringing back in its new specialised bill called the Public Order Bill. So this will see people anybody at a protest can be stopped and searched for any reason. They don't have to have any suspicion of anything. It would be an offence to lock on, it would be an offence to be equipped to lock on, and they can even put orders on certain individuals and organisations, like myself, and say that they're not allowed to organise or attend any protests. So, and if you do, you can go straight to jail, and they can even put electronic tags on you to check that you're not attending. This is just one of the most draconian bills, and it's just outrageous. And having been in court for the last 2 weeks with peers, fighting for our right to protest, it's been hard enough as it is, and we've had to fight really hard, and we'll find out on the 29th of June how that's gone. So we've got the Public Order Bill, we've got the Brexit Freedoms Bill. So this is a bill, obviously, where we've left the EU, we've now got to take all the EU laws and incorporate them into our own legislation, or not. So we get to cycle through and go, is this good, is this not, and put it into our own legislation. This should all be done with due democratic process, but the government can't be bothered. The government wants to just be in full control of that. So they want to pass a bill that says that they can just do it as they please with one or two people picking. Now, that's fine. Some of those bits of legislation we don't want to keep, but some of it we do, because it's things like paternity leave, rules on genetic modification of animals and plants and stuff like that. So there's actually some bills from the EU that we want to keep, and the government just wants to be able to bin what it likes. And that follows on with the other bill they're trying to pass, which is the genetic modification bill. So they want to go way further than the EU ever let them, and start genetically modifying our animals, our livestock, our crops to an extreme extent. So the Brexit Freedoms Bill has to be stopped so that they can't bring in the other bills like genetic modification bill. And then we've got the schools bill. So this is the schools bill, which is going to have a huge impact on the right to home educate. And as we've seen over the last couple of years, people are feeling like their children aren't safe in state schools. The messages they're getting, all this sort of stuff. Many people have made the decision to home educate, and this is completely under threat. They're going to want parents to be DBS checked to see if they're safe to look after their own children during the day. Obviously at night you're fine, but no, during the day. And it's just a complete over-interference of the state to the point where, why do we need the government to say we're capable of raising our own children? These are our own children, and we know them better than the state and the school system possibly could. And then we've got the higher education bill, which is just a discriminatory bill. So this is saying that you have to be of a certain level of intelligence to be allowed to get to get student grants to go to university. So it's not going to be open for all. It's going to become this elitist program where only certain people will be able to get student grants and go to university in the future. And then we have the boycotts bill. So again, we've got the right to protest. We can protest on the streets as individuals. We can boycott businesses that we don't like. One other great form of protest is businesses can boycott other businesses, and the government wants to outlaw that. So the government wants to say that no business can boycott another business from now on, which is just madness. It's just an interference with rights. The protest, you should be allowed to work with whomever you want, whenever you want, and if you don't want to work with somebody, you shouldn't have to. And then we have the online harms bill. This is funny, this one, because they called it the Online Harms Bill, and then obviously there was a big pushback against it, so they've renamed it the Online Safety Bill to try and make it sound nicer. It's not any nicer. So yeah, they're interchangeable. It's now called the Online Safety Bill, but everybody knows it's the Online Harms Bill. And obviously, as we know, this is threatening our rights of free speech online. This will mean that people like Facebook and stuff, as much as they already love to fact check, they will be legally obliged to fact check, otherwise they'll face huge fines. So the whole thing will just get stricter and more stringent. It doesn't matter whether Elon Musk owns Twitter or not. Once that legislation comes in, he won't have a choice. So the Online Harms Bill is a huge problematic bit. But the worst of all is the Bill of Rights. So this is the piece of legislation that wants to remove the whole of the Human Rights Act. The whole thing, not just one clause, two clauses, or amend it. They just want to remove the whole thing. Now, I did a big campaign on this as it was going through consultation, and there are so many problems with this Bill of Rights. You know, they want, on a personal level, you know, say if your human rights have been infringed upon, and you want to take it to court, you want to raise it in court, you know, obviously you go see a lawyer, the lawyer would say, this doesn't have merit, this does have merit, let's go to court. Apparently that's not good enough anymore, and the judges are now going to assess whether you're allowed in court in the first place. Which just, any sort of barrier to getting your human rights protected is prohibitive and shouldn't be done. It should be easy to get your human rights upheld. The government wants to reduce its positive obligations on our human rights, so in circumstances like care homes, prisons, schools, children's homes and so on and so forth, and hospitals, they want to have to do less to protect our human rights. Not more, they actually find it quite burdensome, they don't like it very much. And if you do get into court, so if you've managed to get into court in the first place, they want to judge you. They want to judge you and deem whether you are worthy of having your human rights upheld. So if you've got past transgressions, then that will count against you and you're less likely to have your human rights upheld. What those past transgressions could be, who knows? Is it a default on your council tax? Or is it having committed a serious crime? But they want to be able to not... Human rights won't be universal. You'll have to earn your human rights, and that is not how it should be. But the worst one on a personal level is that they want us to abdicate all of our individual human rights for the greater good. That's what they want to put in there, that we have to abdicate our own human rights for the greater good. Now, again, as we've seen over the last 2 years, that's exactly what was required of us, for us to give up our own human rights for the greater good. And, you know, ultimately, under that, you could justify pretty much anything. You could make an argument for anything. You know, everyone has to scrap their cars because it's for the greater good. Everyone has to, we're going to mandate all children into schools because it's for the greater good. They could argue for anything under that legislation. And then, you know, we've got a whole load of procedural issues in the fact that, at the moment, when they pass legislation, it has to have a statement that says this legislation is human rights compliant. I mean, it's not always, as we know, but at least that statement's there. At least there's a nod to it. At least it looks like they've thought about it. They just want to get rid of that. They don't even want to say that it's human rights compliant. They don't even want to have that check box. They want to have it so that the government can tell the judges exactly how to judge. You know, we've got to have a separation of state and power, because otherwise, well, we're living under a dictatorship. I think that's kind of already happening. So the Bill of Rights is going to be our hugest issue. Obviously, all of them are problematic, all of them combined, even more problematic. But the Bill of Rights, because so many of us are concerned about things like social ID and that sort of digital identity and mandated vaccines and so on and so forth. While we have the Human Rights Act in place, it does offer us some protection. And if we lose that, that's where they can bring digital IDs. They can't currently, and they know it, which is why they want to get rid of it. But they're going to get rid of it while we're in a cost of living crisis. Because how many people, what are you going to care about more? Legislation in Parliament or feeding your children? It's what they've done here and the situation they've created is phenomenal, really. They've thought about every angle, they're coming at us from every angle, and there is going to be a lot to do. So it's like lots of people feel like things over. We can relax, we can rest. And I'm afraid I'm here to tell you that we can't. But the great thing is, we're in a strong position because we've been campaigning and uniting for the last 2 years. We know each other, we trust each other, we've got mechanisms, we go to events, but we've also got empowered communities that's starting up in every area, which is phenomenal. But we have to keep going. I know that we're tired, we've been at it for years, and we've done phenomenally. What we achieved was phenomenal, because if you look at how other countries had to live, we never did. We managed to resist from day one, so we've proven that we've achieved phenomenal things. And obviously they won't credit us with those achievements, but you only have to look at other nations and see how they had to live. So we can and will make a difference on all of this, but it will require us all to keep coming together, uniting, and keep working, keep coming to events up in London. Our next one's on the 25th of June, and we're going to be campaigning. We're going to have one overarching campaign for all of these issues. I'm still figuring out the name of it. But we'll be out on all of these issues and making a sound and raising awareness about this. And then we're also going to, at the end, have an empowerment fair, so we can keep building those empowered communities. So we're going to have media people there, we're going to have health and wellness people, off-grid living, all of that sort of stuff, because we still need to be building the new and the future, the life that we want as well. So it's a very hard balance to find. We have to keep campaigning on these issues because they're really important, but at the same time we can focus on a brighter future, which, and I see it, it's amazing. You look across the nation now, and there are so many wonderful things coming up. So many home ed groups, so many health groups, so many communities, people figuring out how to grow food at their homes, and it's just phenomenal. That's what we need. We need empowered people, and that's what we're getting. So we need to keep doing that, but we also need to keep campaigning, because there is a lot coming up.